Will, thank you for joining us. You're making your fourth start here in the event, coming off a T21, I believe, in 2022. Big question. Why don't we start with how you're feeling?
Yeah, I feel great. I think we really figured out some stuff after Detroit. I've played a lot of golf this year. I think it's been a huge learning year where it's a little bit of trial and error. Some things have gone well, some things haven't gone according to plan, but I feel awesome. I feel 100%. I think beforehand I didn't really know what 100% was, and now my speed, with my longer clubs are back to what they were in 2022. Which is huge for me. I mean, there's a big advantage to that out here on tour of, really being over 180 ball speed. But, I think if you would have put me in this position, kind of where I was at this point last year, I definitely would be happy, but I'm by no means, I would say, satisfied with my play so far this year. So it was nice 2 weeks off, working probably harder than I ever have to get back to the form that I want to play. So things are feeling really good. It just so far this year just hasn't clicked, but I know, keep my head down and keep working, and it's going to click at some point.
Okay. One other question, then we'll open it up for these guys, and I may be going out on a limb, something that's not there, but how much through all this back stuff have you learned about yourself in terms of patience and positive attitude and so forth?
Yeah, my wife can tell you I'm not very patient, but, I think being able to have the extended time off to make sure that I'm healed, and then really learning how my body changes over a 2, 3, 4 week span. It's just been a lot of learning this year. I had a couple of nice finishes early on this year, and then kind of played. I don't think I played too much. I think I just wasn't giving myself the amount of time to rest, on the Monday, Tuesdays that I really should have. And it's hard because when you want to work on things and you need to rest your body, it's kind of a double-edged sword. So, but yeah, I think it's definitely, like I said, the gratitude of being back in this position compared to where I was at this point last year in terms of, I think this point, probably at the end of this month last year was the first time I was hitting golf balls. So, the fact that I'm sitting in this position and, being able to, for sure, be in the playoffs and make a run in the playoffs, like I said, it's a nice spot to be in, but by no means am I satisfied.
Sure. Well, understood. Well, I know this is a special place for you to be. We'll start with John here, or we'll go right back here and then up to John.
Hey, well, Rick Gaiman, I think you skew on the more aggressive side of things on tour, especially off the tee. With that being said, what kind of premium are you putting on playing out of the fairway this week, and are you hitting fewer drivers out here than other places?
Yeah, I think I don't really, like this week it's kind of hard to be that aggressive off the tee. There's some holes where you can maybe try to get around the corners of dog legs. I think I'm probably hitting 5 drivers this week. In the past, I've played a bunch here. I mean, even going back to when I was 13 years old playing the AJGA event here. I've done some goofy things like hitting driver off 9 when you know that can hit 3-iron and a wedge in. But really, it's just trying to run the tables around here. I mean, these are some of the best greens we have on tour, so just give yourself as many looks as you can and get hot with a putter and make a run. But yeah, it's just one of those places. It's a nice throwback golf course. We don't really get this, an old Donald Ross like this that often, and so it's kind of nice to be, in spots where positions are at a premium, but also there's some holes that are just long and straight, and you're better off just shipping it up there. And if you're in the fairway, great. If not, you'll take 140 out of the rough as opposed to 180 in the fairway.
JD.
Will, can you compare this course a little bit to Old Town, where you played a lot in college? I mean, is there a comfort factor in this place?
Yeah, I think they're different in the sense that, Old Town's very wide open, but the greens are very severe, as they are here. You know, here it's tree lined, it's very narrow. You know, Old Town, that's probably part of the reason why Wake has always been one of the longer teams on tour, or longer teams in college, is just because we would tee it up and hit as far as we can. And, you know, I think, you know, conditions wise, grass wise, they're the exact same. I think it's just, this one's just a little bit more classic in the Donald Ross sense. And, you know, even though it was a Perry Maxwell at Old Town, restored by Court and Crenshaw, it's just a little bit different, where over there you may be playing some angles into some holes versus here where, you know, there's a big premium on hitting fairways. I love classic golf, you know, Golden Era golf. You know, we were just sitting there watching the U.S. Senior Women's Open and watching Fox Chapel and seeing squared off greens and squared off bunkers it's pretty fun to look at.
Kevin? Yeah, go ahead, and we'll come over to you, Kevin.
Will, you mentioned the greens being severe. Do you have to, like, consciously pay attention to your composure if the putts aren't rolling in on a course like this? Can it get frustrating quickly if the putts aren't rolling in?
It can be, because they're so pure. I mean, they're like putting on carpet. This place, ever since I've gone to Bermuda, they're like I said, they're some of the top 3 greens we play on tour every year. I think the thing that's interesting, and I know it's been 2 years since I've come here, but I think the greens have matured now, and they're a little bit more receptive. They've kind of flattened out a little bit. There are a few putts that I hit where, you know, reminiscing with my caddy and my coach about how, you know, I think I hit a putt a foot by, and all of a sudden it rolls 6-7 feet by. You know, they've just kind of matured. They've settled a little bit. And so I think it's kind of nice feeling, you know, downhill, you're not just breathing on it, and you can actually kind of be a little bit more aggressive with it. But, you know, like I said, this place condition-wise is top-notch that we have. And, you know, like I said, the greens they're perfect.
Okay.
Well, are there any comparisons to Pinehurst in terms of similarities and what it demands?
Greens-wise, yes. I would say old Pinehurst for sure, but since they took out the trees and kind of put in the native areas, you know, that was a huge change for them, kind of going back to when Pinehurst first opened. But I think, you know, now the greens for sure, and I would say probably like 1990s Pinehurst, it would be exceptionally similar.
And then kind of looking ahead to BMW, but in terms of altitude, you've won in Colorado. Mm-hmm. And what are the different ways that playing at altitude impacts your approach shots, and how does it vary by club? Yeah,
you know, it depends on what time of day it is. You know, I guess TPI has done some stats where for every 500 feet of elevation, it's 1%. But it also changes based off of how high you hit it and temperature. And so, you know, there's times where, you know, when I've played in Denver where I'd have 170 yards and I'd hit gap ledge and I would just throw it up in the air and it feels like it's never going to come down. But then I could also hit a 9-iron from 140 yards and hit it low, and it'll go kind of a similar distance to back home. But I think the big adjustment that you have is really the temperature throughout the day, where in the morning you might, you know, as opposed to maybe the 10% that you would end up getting, it might be closer to 6, but, you know, you also need to adjust as the day goes on.
And does work with launch monitors help the altitude adjustment?
Yeah, being able to, you know, check your numbers, like if you have an early morning tee time, seeing where you're kind of starting it and then kind of gauge it as the temperature goes up. And then in the afternoon, it'll, you know, really, at least when I've played in Colorado, it's always been kind of around 11 or 12 o'clock. It'll be right around that 10%, assuming that you're playing, you know, in Denver. So, you know, I remember, you know, playing on Corn Ferry when we were playing in Columbia, and it was 7,500 feet, and it felt like you could hit a ball in the air, and it was just never going to come down. And so it's just it's fun playing at elevation, just because, you know, you can hit gap wedges from 170 yards, and then you could also hit something lower, and it'll go the same distance back home. So there's a lot of art to it.
Will, how is your back and things? How has that affected your weekly preparation, practice, things like that? And getting back to what John had asked about Old Town, how often did you guys, I mean, you had Old Town in your backyard when you were at Wake Forest, but how often did you guys come out here and play?
Yeah, you know, the back feels great. I think, you know, the one thing that I think my surgeons really did a good job of telling me was that the first year, your recovery is going to kind of feel like a stock market where it goes up and down, but the line of best fit is going to hopefully trend up. And I think that's where, for me, the moments of, feeling really good at the start of this year, play 6 or 7 events, and then, start kind of feeling a little bit of, achiness in there and maybe need to get a cortisone shot or something like that. It's a lot of ups and downs, and I think I was mentally prepared for it, and it gave me the patience that I needed to this first year. I don't like being patient. I don't like going out and, not being in contention like I've played the last 3-4 months. But it's, like I said, it's also motivated me to, get my body to where it needs to be and get my golf game back to where it needs to be. But Old Town's the best. I mean, Charles Frost and Dunlop White have taken great care of us. The whole membership's been awesome to us, or to the team. And I actually played on Saturday with some of my old teammates and my old assistant coach, and had Coach Haas watch me hit some balls on Sunday. And, some of my best memories from Wake were, when we'd go out and play at 4 o'clock, go play 9 holes and then head over to Putters for dinner. So it's just the best, go play in Golden Hour. And, really they treated us like members, and there was really no time that we were ever not able to play, including Mondays.
Have you done, just real quick, have you done anything different with your practice? Do you practice less now, or do you practice less strenuously?
Yeah, I think at the start of this year, and really once I started kind of getting into a little bit of trouble after Augusta, I started to really limit the amount of balls that I was hitting and try to really practice effectively, mainly just because I wanted to finish a season. My first year out on tour, I was the only person that was promoted, and so I needed to win to get into the playoffs, and I didn't win, so I was done here. And then in 22, I win my first playoff event, and then I get hurt, and then last year I was out. So, I want to make sure that this season, regardless of where I finish, I want to go out on, the merit of my play.
Will, in 7 of the last 8 years, 20 under or better has won. I mean, I know the weather could change that, but do you like these kind of, tests where, birdies are going to have to be made?
Yeah, especially here, because it's, it's not it's a good blend of having 4 to 5 holes where you're hitting mid irons in, and then, from there it's a wedge, a lot of wedges. But then also, when the greens are this pure, you feel like if you start a putt on line, it's going to go in. And so, they're good momentum builders, and I think it's good for me too. I love playing in majors. I love the toughness of them. My game was not prepared for them this year, and so I think it's a really good thing for me to go out and play an event where I can go put up 6-7 birdies in a round, something like that. And just good for the confidence, given all I've had to go through.
Okay, I think we have just one more from Matt in the back.
Just real quickly, Will, you've obviously made quite a few changes to your swing over the last year or two. Just wondering, do you have like a primary swing thought that you use now? And if you do, what would that be?
Yeah, I had too many throughout the year. I think the changes that I made early on this season were really effective, but my alignment really got off with kind of the new posture. I'm a little bit more rounded in my back just to alleviate, any of the stress that I have on my lower back. And so I think that, week in, week out, 1 week I'd be aiming too far left, 1 week I'd be aiming too far right. And if I try to shape a shot, there was always something, it felt like. I felt like I was constantly just kind of slapping Band-Aids on things. But now getting back to just the very I'm not focusing on anything body motion now or mechanics. It's just get back to the fundamentals. There were times this year when I was trying to hit a fade and I'd be aiming 5 yards right at the hole, which it's just not going to work. And so, getting back to really playing the game. I spent maybe a little bit too much time focusing on the mechanics throughout the season and trying to get to certain positions in my swing to try to fix it, but when you're not aligned in the right spot, it's not going to work. So just getting back, like I said, to playing the game as opposed to, maybe even playing golf swing, if you will. So we've spent a lot of time in these 2 weeks off. I played a lot of golf at home. I didn't really practice where I was spending 4 or 5 hours on the range type thing. It was a lot more go out and go play 27 holes or whatever in a cart, or 36 holes, and just get back to shooting scores. And being okay with, if I'm hitting shots on the range and I hit one bad one, it's okay, what I do wrong there, let's fix it on the next one. It's okay, well, I hit this one in a bunker, let's go make up and down. And I think that throughout this year, I was so hyper-focused on certain mechanics that when I'd get into a tournament round, I felt like if I hit one bad shot, it would kind of kill the momentum. And so getting back to, getting into a little bit more flow in my rounds of, I felt like throughout this year, I've always had like a 9 or 18 hole stretch that's been pretty good, but the other, 60 whatever holes basically were just kind of marginal. I wasn't that far off, but I was just wasn't doing anything special. So like I said, it's just getting back to playing the game, and I'd get to times where I'd try to start forcing birdies and then make some silly bogeys, and next thing you know, I finished 45th, and I'm like, let's get on to next week. And so getting out of the mechanics mindset and getting back to playing the game is priority number one.
All right. Well, Will, we appreciate your time as always.
Yeah.
Best
Thank
of
you.
luck this week.
Go Deeks.
Thank you.